So today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Emma Speirs from Ballyhoo PR. Emma, thank you so much for joining us. I've wanted you on here for a while now. And for the audience, would you mind telling us what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Emma Speirs and I run Ballyhoo PR. It's a PR and copywriting agency based in Northamptonshire. We help businesses to get seen by a wider audience. We can get them featured in things like magazines, newspapers, TV, sometimes even podcasts like this. We can pitch people as guests. We write a lot of content as well. We're sort of writers by trade. The team are ex-journalists and magazine editors. So yeah, we do write a lot of content to help you reach more people with your key messages.
That's absolutely amazing. And what does your team look like now? How many of you is there?
There's three of us at the moment. There's myself and Laura Smith and Claire Brennan. Um, yeah, sort of a terrific trio, if you like.
Yeah, I see you absolutely everywhere. But it's good. When you got PR agency and they take their own PR seriously. I always struggle with businesses where they're like, do as we say, not do as we do. So it's like a leadership element, isn't it? You've got to make sure you're out there, because otherwise your customers won't have faith in it, I guess.
Exactly, yeah. I think you do need to practice what you preach, and it's not always easy. We know ourselves, or I know myself as a business owner, that you can be guilty of putting all your time and efforts into achieving things for your clients and then think, oh, hang on, I've not put anything out on social media for a few days, or, you can sort of prioritize your clients' businesses over your own. And that's quite common. And that's where we can help our clients out. We can jump in and say, just to keep everything consistent, we can take that off your hands. You just let us know what you want to do and we can run away and do it for you. But yeah, we do try and practice what we preach.
Yeah, that's a really important one. It always looks like you're having a lot of fun, like on social media. But yeah, like a lot of the exhibitions and stuff you go to. But I guess you got to put the fun into PR, because if you're not going to do it, no one is.
I think as well, by our very nature, we're all creative people. So we find we'll have an idea and then, it'll just snowball and escalate. And with the expos, we do tend to try and have a sort of fancy dress theme for everyone. And we've made a bit of a rod for our own backs there because people expect it now and they turn up and go, oh, what are you dressed as this time? But that kind of started with an idea. And then every expo now, we're like, right, what do we need to promote? What are we looking to push? And how can we tie this into a fancy dress idea?
I mean, it's amazing to see what you've done. Have you been in business about 6 years now?
It'll be 7 next month. Yeah.
Oh, 7. Okay, yeah. Because I remember. I'm just trying to think back to the story of how we first met. So I met you in like your first year of business, and Jackie Sherman was running a workshop on networking, and we were at the Four Pairs pub, and we're in the courtyard just talking to each other, and that was when we first met. And then I don't think I saw you again for a few months after that, but then eventually we started working together, and yeah, that's really good. It's like networking's so important. It's like we've like those relationships, they last such a long time.
They do. I think, just relationships are so important. I mean, we were talking before we started recording about the Vulcan Works event that we were working on last week. And that came about through a relationship. There was somebody I used to work with who has now moved on to a different business. It was mentioned they needed PR for this event. And she was like, oh, I know who we need. And I think it's that thing of, treat people how you want to be treated yourself. And you never know at any point in your career an interaction you're having with someone, they then go away and form an opinion of you. And I guess that's PR to a certain extent, isn't it? It's all about your reputation and how you're putting yourself out there. And you never know when people might then do a full circle and come back and want to use you products, your services, because of an interaction they've had with you. So I think, yeah, relationships and networking is hugely important.
I mean, I definitely understand that. We just landed a client from someone I met like 3 years ago, and yeah, and that's happened in the past. It's like, yeah, someone we met years and years ago, and they're like, oh yeah, we met 4 years ago, and by the way, we need an accountant. That is a really important one. And so, Emma, what it would be really great to really understand the story of how you got into business.
I started in May 2016. And prior to that, I had been working. Well, I'll go right to the very beginning. So I always wanted to write for a living. I wanted to be a newspaper reporter or write in magazines. I think as a kid, I'm going to sound really geeky now, but I was really into soaps and things like that. And I thought, oh, my ideal job would be to go and work on a magazine, where you review all the soaps. And I thought that'd be brilliant. So yeah, I decided that that's what I wanted to do, is write for a magazine. So I did English and media at uni with journalism. And then when I came out, sort of wrote to loads of newspapers and magazines. And because I didn't have any sort of work experience or anything, I found it quite tricky to get in anywhere. I was offered a job at an advertising agency, and to begin with, I was just an office junior. But then after a few months, they let me do some proofreading, and then I gradually kind of worked my way up. And then I went off to work for a publishing house in London, and they were doing a lot of careers magazines and publications. So the ones that you see like in the school libraries and university libraries and that sort of thing. So yeah, started working on those magazines, yearbooks and things like that in London, and that was a really good experience. And then that then led to me being offered a job as an assistant editor at a footwear magazine.
How long were you working in London before you got offered that job?
Not that long, actually, probably about a year. And then coincidentally, I bought my first house around the same time, and it was a real doer-upper. And I found that I was kind of commuting to London, doing a full day there, coming back, and then I was like painting skirting boards at night and stuff, and just got to a point where I thought, I need a job closer to home.
You know what? That was the job I had before I started my own business. I was working at a home retail group in Milton Keynes, and we bought a house in Northampton that was a real doer-upper. And it was, and back then, like, we just didn't have the money to properly do it, so we were doing a load of it ourselves. And it was just, you know what, when you're on a shoestring, the things you can actually do and stretch to, and it is pretty impressive. So yeah, I remember doing that. But so you were doing your house up,
yeah, and then I got a job in Kettering. I was assistant editor on a footwear magazine. And that's where I met Mark Costa, who introduced us. He was the graphic designer on that magazine. And yeah, again, after not very long, I went from assistant editor to editor, and then I was given some other magazines. There was one on homeware, and we also acted as part of a press team as well. So I was really lucky in the fact that this company then put me through some PR training so that I could be part of their press team. And we would put together press releases. We would deal with any incoming media inquiries, because it was quite a visual business as well. So we used to get a lot of requests for TV crews to come in and do some filming and things. I did that for about 3 years. And then after that, I went to work for Northamptonshire Chamber of Commerce. And I was taking on, again, sort of a dual role, editor of their magazine, but then also doing the PR.
Their magazine's in business, isn't it?
So,
and that, because you've always had really good connections with the Chamber, haven't you? So
definitely think that's, going back to what we were saying before about relationships, that really helped me. Is I was there for 7 years in the end, and then left there to join a PR agency. And yeah, it was at that PR agency that by then I had 2 young kids. And they got chicken pox quite closely together right at the end of the holiday year. And yeah, I kind of couldn't come into the office. So yeah, I asked if I could work from home, and it wasn't really a thing then. So they were like, no, not really. You'll have to take unpaid leave. And I thought, oh, this is just ridiculous. So I started to think then, well, maybe I could just do this for myself, fit it in around the kids, do the hours that I want to do. And through having worked at the Chamber for so long, I thought, I reckon I've got a few connections if I kind of go back and sort of, put a post on LinkedIn and say, this is what I do now. Hopefully I can kind of start up a bit of freelance work. That was the plan.
As in alongside what you were doing? Or
no, sort of quit my job and then go freelance. That was the plan. And then I looked at a few freelance websites and started to sort of think about signing up for them, but the rates were awful, like your Fiverr and things like that.
I've used that before, but nothing on Fiverr is actually a Fiverr anymore.
No.
It's like the pound shop, isn't it?
But yeah, I could see like they were saying things like for a 200-word article, you'd get like a penny a word. And I thought, I can't live off that. So yeah, I thought I'll update my LinkedIn and I'll do a website, but then I didn't know what website URL to go for. So I thought I can't really have like emmaspeirs.com. So I decided that I was just going to come up with a sort of business name. I tried to think about different things and they were all kind of taken, when you start looking. And then I started then thinking, right, I need to find a different word. So I went through a thesaurus and I started to look up the different words of things that I wanted to either offer or be known for. And I think I looked up the word publicise, and then Ballyhoo was in there, and it was to generate a buzz or publicise something, create a Ballyhoo. And I thought, oh, that works. And then, yeah, looked it up, and it was free. So, yeah, decided to go for Ballyhoo PR, and then put a website together and, yeah, brand logo. And, yeah, before I knew it, I had a business, which wasn't really the intention. But, yeah, and that was 7 years ago.
I guess that's how most people get into it, though, because I was... Actually, I had to, when I first started my business about 9 years ago, I had to put a business plan together because I was trying to get funding from the council. In hindsight, it was only a tiny little bit of funding, and today I wouldn't even get out of bed for it. But it is, but it did force me to put a business plan together, and I remember. Like I just wanted to be a freelancer when I first started out, because like, you know, at the beginning you want that freedom. It's like, hey, as long as I can work from home in my pajamas, everything. I didn't put that in the business plan, but yeah, the idea. I never put any staff or employees into it. I didn't really talk about the brand. It was like, although Northants Accounting, as we were back then, we still kind of are, but abbreviated. And yeah, well, I remember doing that, and like the first business plan, it was really just me as a freelancer, just like yours actually. And then when did it change? I think I was about 9 months in, and I got a telemarketer to work for me, and she pretty much used up all the savings I had, but she got us our first clients. And it was, and then I realized, actually, there's something here. If I can get other people to do stuff, and then grow the business while I do other stuff, and then that's kind of when the seed started for me bringing on employees. When did you hire your first person?
It would have been 2018, so sort of 2 and a bit years afterwards. And again, I tried different things before. I tried offering work experience through the Prince's Trust. That was quite interesting, because the girl that came was like sat at my dining table whilst I was sat in the office next door to study. And then I had a VA, and same thing, like she would come to mine every Tuesday, and yeah, we would sort of sit and work together. But yeah, I kind of got to a point where I thought, if I want this additional help, I can't do it all at home. So I think I got an office in the June in Corby, just a small office in like a shared office space. And then, yeah, started looking to recruit.
When do you think you felt like a proper business then?
I'm not sure, I still do sometimes. I think it probably was around then when we had the office. I had my first employee. We were getting sort of bigger contracts, and yeah, it kind of felt like things were moving at a good pace. And then, yes, that was September 2018 when Katie joined us. And then, yeah, we just kind of carried on growing the business, getting more and more clients in. And then, when would it have been? Beginning of 2020, I was like, right, we need another writer, because Katie was sort of taken on to be not so much an assistant, but someone to support me. So I could still do all the writing, but she could do things like facilitating events, setting up photo shoots. Yeah, just help basically be there to support what other work I was doing. And yeah, then I thought, I'm still doing too much of the doing, you know, I'm writing so much, and I was doing sort of lots of extra hours, late nights, early mornings. So yeah, decided to recruit another writer. And yeah, we just appointed someone. She was halfway through her notice period, and then COVID hit. I do remember her ringing me and saying, look, do you still want me to come and work for you? Is there still a job? And we had lost a few clients, and there was part of me that was like, oh, if I'm honest, I don't know. She was really good, and I really wanted her. And I thought, yeah, definitely there's still a job for you. Carry on working your notice period. And then I kind of thought, I'll just figure the rest out before she starts. And thankfully, we found during COVID that there were a few companies that, again, everybody was in shock, weren't they? They didn't really know what to do, what was happening. And I think the easiest thing to save money on is sort of marketing and PR, isn't it? It's they're like, okay, we're not able to get to the office. We're not able to, some of our clients, you know, they had shops, or their work was very much on site and they couldn't get on site. So they didn't know where their money was coming from. And I totally understood that. So, yeah, some turned off activity, some reduced what they were doing. But then after a month or so, it was actually, how are people going to know what we're doing? How can we reach out to people and say that we're still operating, or, you know, we're offering a different service, or that our office or shop might be closed, but you can do business online. And then, yeah, thankfully, after about 4 to 6 weeks, people started coming back on board saying, actually, we need you to keep our business running. So
I guess when you got employees, it makes you really decisive. You don't always get it right, but you have to try and be a lot more decisive than you would be on your own. You're at a point where you're not just trying to convince yourself, you're trying to convince them as well.
yeah, that's it. I think you have to be sort of really agile and flexible as well, don't you? You need to, when something like COVID hits, obviously not that happens all the time, but it's like, right, now what do we do? And you come up with a plan instantly, don't you? And you don't have time to hang about.
Yeah, like, you know, when you've got, because when COVID hit and that member of staff who was joining you, I guess it was, the stakes would have been a lot higher as well, because it wasn't just about the risk to your sales. It was the fact that they're moving away from a role where they'd be walking away from their furlough as well.
That's true. I hadn't really thought about that.
Okay. I mean, but yeah, so it made the stakes a lot higher, because I know a few other people in that scenario, and like a member of staff had just moved from another job to their job, and then they had to, but they couldn't furlough them. But there was no work for them either, and like you had to be in a job for, I think, like 9 months or something like that before you could actually claim it. So I do remember, but it's good that you could see that you were going to grow, and that you'd find a way. I think, do you have a philosophy in terms of, like, you know, the future of your business when it comes to that kind of stuff? Is it what gives you the confidence to go and hire someone and you know, figure it out?
I think it's a tricky one, really. I think you never really have 100% confidence, I don't think, as a solo business owner. I think if I was to have a business partner that I could maybe bounce ideas off or something, it'd be a bit different. But when you're making all the decisions yourself, I think you can't help but second guess yourself and think, oh, am I doing the right thing here? I know I do. I have these conversations in my own head with myself quite a lot. Yeah. But I think eventually, whatever decision you come to, if it's not working out, then a lot of these decisions aren't reversible, are they? If I decide, okay, now's not the right time to hire, then I can always look to hire in a couple of months' time. Or it's not really forever, is it? But I do think you do have to be decisive, and you do have to make decisions work. And a lot of it is making stuff work. And I'm not a big believer in sort of manifestation or anything like that. I think there's an element of that. I'm a bit superstitious about some things, but I think you do need to take action as well, don't you, to make things come true. So it might be that you're focusing on something a lot more, and that's what makes it come true, because, you know, you want to grow the team to a certain size, or you want to achieve a certain turnover, or you want a particular client, and you think, oh, if I got that client, then, you know, that would be brilliant. So I think sometimes you make these small decisions, but you have your eye or your focus on something, and that's what drives you. And yeah, if that is the way you work, then eventually it works out.
Absolutely. It's Alex Hormozy, although I think I've mentioned him in 3 podcasts now, so maybe I've got to stop doing it. But Alex Hormozy, he talks a lot about just understanding inputs, and I think that's really powerful, because like you don't always know how. You can't always focus on that end result. Sometimes you just got to focus on the steps you got to take along the way. And but it took me a long time to get to that point. Before, I was just like, hey, what if enough clients don't come along? What if I can't make the cash flows work and the business fails? But actually, after a while, I think I got to a point where I was just like, okay, look, I can't think about not enough clients not coming along. I can't think about running out of cash. All I can do is think about the things I can do now to make sure those things don't happen. So it's like, am I connecting with enough people on Facebook? Am I spending enough money and time on SEO? Am I spending enough time with our existing clients. That's after a while you realize that's all you can focus on, like doing the day to day as well as you can, and then every few months then taking that step out of the business and looking at the bigger picture and making sure we're moving in the right direction.
And that's a hard thing to do as well, isn't it? That is one thing I've struggled with, I think, is you get so busy that you don't have time to get yourself sort of out of the business. It's that whole working in the business or on your business, isn't it? If you wait for a quiet time to work on your business, that quiet time might never come. So you need to somehow do both at the same time. It can be a bit of a struggle, particularly if you are really busy. But you know, for example, say you're working on a project that's only a 6-month project. You might have your heads down, like, we really need to get this done and we're working all these extra hours. But what happens at the end of that 6 months? You still need to have something in your pipeline, don't you? So you still need to be getting yourself out there and trying to keep those relationships going, trying to keep that presence up. And it could be quite tempting to be like, I've had a really busy day today, I'm not going to put that post on LinkedIn. But you still need to keep those things ticking over as well.
It took me ages to get to a point where I could regularly post on social media. But then, I take a long time making habits. So I think about 8 years in, I just about got it. But did you ever feel like, because I think like personality-wise, in terms of business owners, you're probably a lot more similar to me than a lot of people I come across.
Oh, okay.
And I always, because probably up to about 5 or 6 years into my business, I always had the feeling like the rug was going to get pulled out from under my feet. And do you ever get that, or did you used to get that?
I think a lot of people do. I think it's when you start speaking about it that you realise a lot of other people feel the same way, and that whole imposter syndrome where you never feel as if you're quite good enough, and I don't think nobody's doing anything 100% perfectly, are they? There's always ways you can improve. But I think, when you're running your own business and you are putting yourself out there, you feel almost that you need to match up to everything that you're putting out there about yourself. And again, from a PR point of view, we come across that a lot, that there'll be clients of ours that are doing amazing things. And when you say to them, oh, why don't you enter an award? They're like, oh, no, but we're not good enough to win an award. Or why don't we put you forward for an interview with this magazine? And, oh, well, they don't really want to hear my story. My story's not as interesting as someone else's. Or be like, but no, you are achieving these things. Or if we do an entry for them for an award and they win the award, they're like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, well, we might have just put the entry together. You've done everything that we've put in there. So you're the one that's had like a record year in terms of turnover, or you've innovated this, brand new product or something. They're the ones doing the work. We're literally just packaging it up and sending it to someone to judge. So,
I think what I described there about the rug, always feeling like the rug was going to get pulled out from under you, I think that's also where you get a lot of your humility as a business owner. Because you're always like, there's always this feeling that actually something can go wrong, and it's almost like when you're in this epic landscape and you feel like how insignificant humans really are compared to like the universe, and I think business can teach you that as well. Like when you're an employee, you see like part of a business a lot of the time. But when you run your own business and you see everything and you understand everything that's going on, and it does kind of put you in your place a bit. And that's one thing I've consistently seen is like business owners are like some of the most humble people I know. And actually it's a good thing, because like one day, like if your staff make a mistake, or if you make a mistake, I tend to find business owners don't flip out, because they know that it could the next day could just be their team making a mistake. And but the other side of that as well is that it comes down to your reputation and your faith, and people having faith in you that you're always going to put something right. By the way, we don't make lots of mistakes, but every now and then it can happen, just like in any business. And yeah, definitely. So,
and people learn from mistakes, don't they? I mean, I think rather than flipping out, like you say, if somebody has done something that's not right, then you sort of show them why it's not right, and if by doing it another way you can achieve something better, then they'll know for next time, won't they? And they'll work on it in a different way. And it's all part of when you are an employer that you nurture people, don't you? There's that whole thing of being a manager or a leader, and you can't really chastise people for making mistakes. And which employer, how many employers make mistakes? Again, you don't get things right 100% of the time, do you? So I think if you're open and transparent, and when your employees make a mistake, they feel they can come to you and go, oh, do you know what? I've really messed up here. I'm sorry. I'm like, well, no, we can fix it. It's fine. But then if I make a mistake, it's kind of saying to them, oh, do you know what? I've made a bit of a bad choice here, but we're going to do this. And I think, as with any relationship in life, sort of honesty it does.
No, I definitely agree with that. It's and also actually it comes down to the culture of a business as well, doesn't it? Because if there's a blame culture, then there's also a cover-up culture, and that's when things build up. It's somewhere you don't know about it until they explode, and that's quite an important one to avoid. So no, that's really good. And okay, perfect. So it sounds like you've had a really good journey up to now. And is Ballyhoo PR the only business you've ever run?
I've never run another business. Sort of closest I've come to it is sort of having properties that we've rented out.
I guess it's a bit different. But that's really cool. So what have you found is like the most challenging thing about running Ballyhoo PR?
Oh wow. I think recruitment is hard.
Do you feel it's harder at the moment than it's ever been?
Definitely.
Yeah, that's
massively.
pretty much what everyone says.
Yeah, I think as well. I was having a chat with somebody on this last week, actually, at an event, and she was saying that the people now that rock up to an interview almost with their own set of conditions. I want to be earning 50 grand a year. I want to be home based. I want to have, I don't know, a company car.
I want to work 20 hours a week.
I think particularly, I'm going to sound really old now, but like younger generation, I think it's, the whole Instagram thing, isn't it? That they think they can achieve this fantastic lifestyle with, wearing Gucci, Louis Vuitton bags, traveling all over the world without actually working for it.
I guess we're about the same age, aren't we?
Yeah, I think you're being generous. Yeah, but I'll go with it.
So yeah, I remember my first job out of uni. It was hard just to get that. And now anyone graduating from university, they'll be saddled with eye-watering debt, but they can pretty much just walk into anything. But then the other side of that is it's a bubble at the moment, isn't it? I can't see everyone I'm talking to, and all the content that I'm absorbing online. It's saying it can't go on forever because actually the economy just won't be able to grow if it can't get people.
That's so true.
But it does, So I think the statistic I saw was about half the workforce is about 500,000 people short.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's mainly because of all the people that retired early, because people are going to retire anyway, and then COVID probably just pushed them along.
Yeah, they didn't want to return after they'd had a bit of time off, I suppose, maybe.
Yeah, and then there's probably quite a few young people as part of that who just realise actually furlough is a lot more fun than working, and just trying to do a permanent furlough or. Yeah, it is. So I guess there's a lot of people missing from the workforce, but then the government's trying to get people who have already retired back into work based on their last budget. I think it's more about getting people that retired to vote Tories. But I won't make a political statement there. It's I've got a feeling the generous pension allowances are more likely to get them a vote than to get someone back into work.
Oh. Well, it's also tricky, isn't it? I don't want to go down the politics route, but everything's so messed up at the moment, isn't it? Just had some really random job applications and not a lot of people. There was another one, actually. We were recruiting for a role beginning of the year for a social media executive. And we had some people, I'd put on the advert about making a video as part of your application, again, just so we can sort of see skills. And the amount of people that were applying and not doing the video, just sort of skipping that bit. And then when you go back and say, oh, actually, as part of the application process, we're asking people to put a video together, they just didn't come back.
You know what? In the past, people will tell you build a recruitment funnel, and it's so along the process of recruitment, just have tasks which weed people out, and so the people that can follow an instruction, the people that can't. But now you get one person entering the funnel, and then no one coming out the other side. So, or like, recruitment's completely changed in the last 2 years, I think. I think one of our strengths was we kind of topped up on people before we went into COVID, because now trying to get the team to the size it is now, it would take a lot more work. I think the other side though is, like, this is like, there's a lot of limiting beliefs out there as well. Like, you can't recruit that. I don't believe that. All you're doing is it's more competitive. You're fighting for a smaller pool of people. But in the end of the day, if the workforce is large, and if 5% of it's missing or 10% of it's missing, there's still the other 90%. And what that means is, like, I guess for the money we were paying before, we might not be able to get as good a candidate, but for more money, well, actually, no, we do sometimes get a really good candidate for the same amount of money, because a lot of it comes down to having a really strong culture in our business. One of the most toxic things you can do in a business is just get like a really high earning candidate in just because you had to pay them that, and they're getting paid. And then everyone else just thinks, that's a good idea, I'll just move. That is one of the challenges at the moment, because it's not just about paying an extra few £1,000s, it's about paying everyone an extra few £1,000s. And that's one of the things we've been working on with clients, just helping them understand actually from a pricing point of view. Like, you're going to have to work this all out again, because a huge part of your cost base has changed. And you can try and save costs, but the chances are you're probably already efficient.
The costs are going up as well elsewhere in the business, aren't they? Like utilities, and like we've had our phone go up, our IT support go up, our electricity, like everything is going up. So if your costs are increasing, but then you're also looking to pay out more in terms of wages to keep the people you've got or recruit new people.
A lot of business owners I come across, they still struggle to have that conversation around pricing. It's just one of those really awkward things. I don't know if it's everywhere in the world or maybe this country, but I think it's just business owners just, it's almost like they fear rejection. And I think if I look at the psychology behind it, like, what's the one reason I've always put off price increases? It's like, oh, actually, what if they don't think I'm worth more money? What if...
It feeds into that imposter syndrome thing we were talking about before as well, doesn't it? And having that rug pulled from under you. If, I guess you're opening yourself up to it, aren't you, by saying we're going to start charging you more money. You don't want people to come out, oh, but you're not very good, or we're going to take our business elsewhere, and all of that stuff.
But then the other side of that is if you don't do it, then you lose your staff. Then you end up with the imposter syndrome the other way. It's like, why are they rejecting me?
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, you're always going to get it. And I think like part of being a business owner is really dealing with that. And actually, imposters, I don't know if you've ever watched the video "Fake It Till You Make It" by Amy Cuddy.
No.
That's an amazing video. It's a TED Talk, and Amy Cuddy, she was a Princeton graduate, and then she had a crash which took, I think, like 70 IQ points off off her intelligence, and then she tried to get back into academia, and she was told she just wasn't intelligent enough. And then finally she managed to like pretend being intelligent, and then became intelligent.
Oh, how interesting is that?
Yeah, because she'd convinced herself she was smart, and then she started behaving like a smart person would behave again. And then her IQ went back up. And then part of the videos, it's really moving actually, because then it's all about how she's helped other people do the same thing. Because like it's Harvard Business School. She's like one of the professors there, or she was. So like you get loads of people with imposter syndrome there, like, people that have just gotten through the skin of their teeth, and they're surrounded by all these bigwig CEOs who are doing their MBA. And some of them are just like, oh, I don't belong here, I shouldn't be here. And then it's about how she helps them, and how she helps them actually feel like they do belong there and then excel. And then as part of that as well, she she talks about body language. Like she's always talking about, like, if you go into an important meeting, like, you've just got to express yourself before you go in, not like during. So like
just stand up, do a power stance.
Exactly. And it's really good. And that was one of the first videos I watched. I think Jackie Sherman, actually, the person who where we met at her event, she actually introduced me to that video when I first started out in business. And that was a really good video, because I was like, whenever, it doesn't matter how, like, how unconfident I feel, I'm just going to pretend like I am.
You started really young, didn't you, your own business?
I was 29. We're like the same age, I guess. No, I was 29 when I started my business, so about 9 years ago, and I was competing for business against like accountants who are like late 40s, and luckily a lot of those accountants took early retirement now. No, but it was one of those things. I was like, wow, they got like 30 years of experience. Like, what have I got? And so all you can do in that situation is, you got to fake it till you make it, but also you do have to make it. So it is, hopefully it'll get a lot better. And then hopefully people come back to their senses, maybe unretire. And also like, employees will kind of become a bit more reasonable in terms of what they're expecting when they move. So I've got a feeling the world's got to get back to normal at some point.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, again, sort of going back to why I started my business in the first place was because I didn't have that flexibility. So it's something that I've always championed. And when I sort of have recruited people, I'm not saying I exclusively hire mums, but yeah, the people that have worked for me have all been mums. And it's something that I feel very passionate about, is that there's so many women who, they go off to university or they do an apprenticeship or whatever qualifications they've got, and then they start building this career. They have children, and then it's almost like their career doesn't matter anymore. They either have to reduce their hours right down, which then takes some of the enjoyment out of the job maybe. Again, I've worked places where if you ask to reduce your hours, they then obviously take tasks off you and give them to other people. And then you're like, oh, it's not really the same job anymore. Or, you decide to work longer hours, but then you don't see your kids, or you have to pay out for childcare or a nanny. And inevitably you find you speak to so many people, and there's this big campaign that Pregnant Then Screwed are doing at the moment as well, where the whole sort of gender pay gap, all of that, there's so many women out there that have fantastic experience, skills, they can bring so much to a business, but because of that rigidness in terms of, you need to work at an office, you need to do 9 to 5, they're just not able to do that alongside having children and having to be there for the 9 o'clock drop off and the 3 p.m. pickup. It's just so unfair. So I think that flexibility is hugely important, but then it's kind of managing those expectations a bit as well, that you need to earn your stripes almost, don't you?
I always get caught in the middle on this one, because we've got some members of the team that really want it, and somewhere it's not necessarily suitable. But one thing I have realised is actually, like young mothers or and fathers, I guess, they are a huge resource that is sometimes undervalued, because like if I've got two kids, a 1.5-year-old and a 4-year-old, 4.5-year-old, and if I just look at how much I've grown as a person in terms of maturity and also determination and just professionalism and all that kind of stuff since before they were born and afterwards, then actually that all those things, like and also my wife has probably grown a lot more than I have, as she reminds me that is, but she's as a mother, she's grown really drastically. I'm starting to see at this stage, why these larger businesses work so hard to retain people through their like maternities, because statutory maternity pay, it's not enough these days. It's just like minimum wage isn't going to get you the best candidates, because people want to know, actually they want to maintain that relationship throughout their pregnancy, and then you're getting someone back on the other side. I think part of it is they're probably under more pressure because they've got more stuff going on, but actually if they've grown well and they can handle that pressure, and they're still going to prioritize your business to a reasonable level, then actually you can end up with a very good candidate for probably the same amount of money you're paying them for, plus inflation.
And they've probably got like 20 years experience, because they've had that experience before they've had children, and they want to pick things up again, but they want to be able to work in a way where they can still use their skills and their experience, their knowledge, and build on it as well. They've not given up, they still want to build on their career and personal development and learn new things and all of that stuff just as much as they did before. I don't think it squashes ambition, and yeah, get me on my soapbox. It really annoys me.
It is. I mean, for us, I think where it balances out is one thing I found is just having a team in an office. You get that learning by osmosis, just people being surrounded by the right kind of conversations, picking up what's going, being able to react to stuff quickly. And I do understand, like, in the long term, there probably is a balance there, but also it can be the culture of the business as well, because some businesses are probably better suited to working from home than others. Like for us, I used to love working from home, but then because of COVID, ironically, I got dragged back into the office, and we had a junior team, and some people in the business needed to work from home, so I stayed with the junior team. But I think when you've got a mixture of junior team members and more senior team members, like the senior team members tend to do really well at home and they tend to be really efficient. Junior team members, it can be a little bit harder to keep an eye on them. But I think it's definitely possible to achieve the balance. It's just a business has to put a bit of effort into achieving it in the first place, and creating a system that works.
I agree. I mean, when we gave up our Corby office, that was at the sort of height of COVID. I think we'd been paying rent for 6 months and we'd not been able to get in there. So again, we didn't know how long the sort of time scale was on these things, did we? When it got to 6 months, I was like, do I just make a call and stop the office? So that's what I did.
We signed up to our Milton Keynes office the month before COVID.
Oh, no.
We wanted to expand out, and we were in a 12-month contract, but I still did use the office over COVID anyway. But
it's not the same. It's not why you got it though, is it? It's different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was. But yeah, that's always frustrating when it happens. Sign up for something and then realise you don't need it. But
that's it. So we all reverted to working from home, and it did work. But I did miss that, what you were saying about the osmosis and sort of bouncing ideas off each other. And yeah, as a bunch of creatives, I think that's valuable. And then we had just had somebody start, like I said, at the beginning of COVID, and then we hired somebody else. Again, we had to do the whole interview process over Teams. And then I remember I met up with her in a Costa halfway between our houses to give her a laptop in the car park, because everything was just locked down. Yeah. And then we sat across the car park with our car doors open, having a chat for like an hour. It was like her induction, if you like. It was all a bit crazy, but yeah, we were completely remote for a while, and I felt that we'd lost that. And the fact that we had 2 new team members, it felt that we never properly gelled as a team because we'd only ever seen each other on screen. So that was the motivation behind getting the office that we've got now, was, like you say, getting that mix right. So, we can only be in the office all together. We have a team day every Thursday, so we're always all in on a Thursday. And then as and when maybe we've got clients coming in for meetings or there's other stuff we need to work on together. But we definitely have that core day on a Thursday where we're all in working together, because I think you need it as a team.
So what kind of businesses do you mainly work with at the moment?
We work with lots of different businesses, really. We work with businesses that are in construction. We work with ones that offer sort of service-based businesses or business-to-business services. We work with retailers. Yeah, it's a real sort of mix of different companies and industries. There's a battery company we're doing some work for at the moment. So that's been a bit of a learning curve for us. We've had to learn all about like lithium and different battery technologies and stuff.
Like electric vehicle batteries?
No, they do lots of batteries for different things. So they do like aerial work platforms, like cherry pickers and things. They boat batteries. Yeah, loads of different applications. But again, that's the beauty of what we do, really, because I guess you can apply almost like the framework or model of what we do to any business. It's just we get to know the businesses we're working with, do all the research, have sort of regular monthly calls with them so we know exactly what they're working on, what they want to promote. We do the research, we do the interviews, we interview clients over the phone and kind of pull pieces together. But yeah, you can become an expert in lots of things, and it's quite funny if you're ever, having a chat with someone and then you start talking about the different types of asbestos, or yeah, you get really technical about different things that you've had to learn about, and then people are like, how do you know about that? Or actual COVID, when all that kicked off, we were working with a network of GP practices, And that was one thing that kept us really busy, is they had a lot of communications they needed to get out all around, basically how the surgeries were closing, but, how people could access.
So you did all of that for them?
We did all of that for them. So we rolled out some stuff from top level NHS that was kind of being disseminated across all sort of doctors' practices. But then we also had one specific to each of those 8 practices, and we were managing their Facebook pages, and we were answering all the questions that were coming. And as you can imagine, there were so many people sort of sending questions in, going, well, what about this? And then when the vaccination rollout happened, it was, well, when is it my cohort? And people wanting to jump the queue because, they've got an underlying health condition, but even though it's not one of the ones that's been listed in the first cohort and all of this stuff. So trying to navigate all of that, but quickly we found that we were becoming almost experts in the vaccination and how it worked and what cohort we were on at the moment. And then when you saw people moaning that, I don't know, Doris hasn't had it even though she's got a heart condition, you're like, but you're not going to be invited for another couple of months yet. And you'd be like, no, just need to stop talking about it. But some of these things, because you do really get absorbed in what you're working on, it is quite funny then when you hear other people talking about it and you think, oh, actually, I know a bit about that. It's a bit of variety.
Well, we have quite a broad client base as well, and actually, I do sometimes think, because there's always a pressure in business to try and specialize in one industry, and I know there are some really successful businesses out there that do just specialize in one industry, but like that's what we call vertical niching, right? So horizontal niching is when you specialize in one type of service, really, and but. I don't know. I find it really boring just to specialize in one thing. Like it is good having lots, although it is hard work as well. But I guess you don't want to go too broad, but you don't want to go too narrow. And
I mean, I've known sort of people I've known or met through different PR circles as well, where they've decided to niche down. I know there was one lady who I knew who decided to niche right down to work with just the wedding industry. And then she found she got quite bored and she opened things up again. And I think once you kind of pitch yourself as being the expert in a particular field, I don't know, you kind of risk looking a bit silly if you then go back on that. And so you've got to be really key. I mean, but then somebody else who I know, she used to be a solicitor, then trained up in PR, and now she works with specifically law firms because she knows, she has that legal knowledge and she knows how it works, and she's built an amazing business through doing that.
I guess one of the strengths, though, of you working with lots of different businesses and industries even, is you're probably seeing what works well in one industry, and then you could probably cross-apply it into...
Definitely.
That's probably harder to do if you just focused on one type of business or one industry. I think for us, we although we don't specialize in one industry, we do specialize in a type of business owner. Like typically they've got 1 to 10 employees, and they want to build up a small business that's highly profitable, but they don't necessarily want to build like a gigantic empire. They don't necessarily want to be the next Virgin. But they want to have a really good quality of life for themselves and for their team and their families, and that's what we focus on. I guess I asked you what's the hardest part of, what's the most challenging thing you've done, and that's really just recruiting staff, isn't it? And building that team. But
I think, recruiting staff has been hard. I also think doing it on your own is hard.
Yeah, this is, I sometimes think about this. Like I see, we've got some clients who are partnerships, so they got someone else in the business, and sometimes I do envy them a little bit, because you're like, hey, that person's really good at sales and that person's really good at operations, and then I guess if you're on your own, you have to be really good at everything, or outsource it. But even with outsourcing, I'd always take it with a pinch of salt, because I think you've got to understand the basics or something before you outsource it. You don't have to be perfect at it, but
and the what's on the line as well. It's not going to matter as much to. If you're outsourcing your sales, for example, okay, you want them to deliver, but if they don't bring in the sales, they're not really going to suffer as much as you as the business owner, are they?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, but then it probably costs less to outsource your sales than to give someone half your business. Yeah. But then, do you want 50% of a really big pie, or do you just want a cupcake?
And again, it's obviously got potential to go wrong, because again, I've been having conversations with someone I know who's in the process of setting up his own business with an ex-colleague. And I'm like, oh, you're so lucky that you're kind of going into it with somebody else, because I've kind of done it all on my own, and it can be incredibly lonely. But then I also know somebody else who set up, well, I think he set up the business himself first, then he brought a partner on, and then it all just kind of went wrong and they've fallen out massively, and he's kind of walked away with nothing. And you think, oh, that's the thing, isn't it? You can have that partnership, but there's also more risk and potential for it to go wrong, as well as the support.
Yeah, actually, I think for every 2 stories I hear about it going really well, I hear one about it not going so well. But then also the other side of it is, when you do finally look back at everything you've achieved, you kind of know, well, actually, even in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, when I look back at my business, I never think, hey, I did it all by myself, because you can't. You've got a team, and they were with you, and I mean, even though they might not be partners in the business, they were partners in the business. They just got paid in a different way, and they still had to have faith in the business to get there. Maybe it's, if the idea of partnership, the reason that puts people off is because they want to just do their own thing, then you never really completely do it by yourself. But you do, with a partnership, you've got to compromise a lot. Whereas if you're doing things your own way, you get to do things your own way, but then that's where you can make big mistakes, because you don't have that other voice who's your equal saying, hey, don't do it this way because of this and that.
I think that's it. It's going back to what I was saying before about having like full confidence in your decisions and stuff like that. I think I've found that hard, that I kind of question myself a lot, and knowing if you've done the right thing.
How do I deal with self-doubt these days? I'm just trying to remember. I should, because I think recently anyway, like post-COVID for accounting firms was actually reasonably good. Apart from we had to work really hard. There were some accounting firms I heard of that just furloughed themselves, and exactly. And I think there was a couple in Northampton, and essentially the clients called up like on the first day of COVID, thinking, holy crap, we're screwed here, and they just got like an answer message which said, hey, we've been furloughed. So that wouldn't have been good for those clients. But we picked up a couple of clients from accountants who had furloughed themselves. It's like, but now, like, the self-doubt, it comes and goes. But I think I've realized, like, every successful person like I've spoken to, the self-doubt never goes away. It's and I think the only time it goes away is for people who aren't pushing themselves. Like if things get too easy, when you're operating within your comfort zone, then that's when it's easy not to have self-doubt.
And I think as a business owner, you never get to that point where you're not pushing yourself, do you? You're always just trying to do your best, aren't you? Best for your employees, best for your clients, almost to the detriment of yourself. You're just constantly pushing. Well, no, I am.
I'm absolutely always pushing it as well. Sometimes I try and push it less, because you can end up tiring out everyone around you, and you've just got to be aware of that, because people don't always work at the same pace you do. They don't always have the same priorities, and but you still need them and you still want them. So you can trying to sort of manage that energy, manage that the self-doubt. I think it's always been there, but you've just got to think back over time and realize the things you did before that helped you deal with it. And it was always about focusing on the things that you can control and understanding the things that you couldn't. And that's been a good strategy for me.
I think that is a big lesson I've learned as well. And then also managing your reaction to something as well. If it's something you can't control.
I mean, I have to do a lot of work on that. It's I do these days. I do sort of, I guess, just before you came in for the podcast, we had like a little client emergency. In hindsight, it was nothing, but I was just like, I've only got 5 minutes to deal with this before the podcast starts. And then I was like, okay. And then I probably was panicking a bit. I was like, a member of our team was dealing with it. He was on lunch, so I called him like 3 times. It's like, But he came back in. We managed to resolve it. Luckily, you were 10 minutes late. And then, but the traffic was pretty bad. So, and then we managed to get it done in time. And but actually, in hindsight, it was one of those things they could easily have just dealt with without me. It was I don't know, hopefully. So it does. You do have to manage your reaction. Like, I think sometimes it's tempting just try and get something resolved straight away, or tempting to feel really passionate about something. But actually, like as a business owner, you've got to take a step further back than most other people would, and then just view it in the grand scheme of everything else.
That's it. I think sometimes if you've received, like, I don't know, an email that, because again, they're quite hard to judge in terms of tone, aren't they? And you think, oh, really? And then I if it's something I think is a bit critical, then I get really kind of upset about it. And I think, oh, no, I've really disappointed someone, I've upset someone, and kind of escalates in my head. And then I think, actually, what they've said isn't that bad. It's just you've chosen to react in that way. And it's just...
But sometimes it is, actually, because, like, it's amazing how you can talk to someone and they'll be really nice in person or on the phone. They, like, when they use an email, they'll use language they wouldn't use in person. And I think a lot of people, or most people, struggle with, like, getting their tone right in an email. So, but then I think people have got to understand that the tone is never quite right in an email either. But actually, that's kind of why we had that mini emergency before the podcast started, because it was quite a strong email. But it was all right. It was all sorted. Everyone was happy afterwards. But yeah, absolutely. So, and in terms of, like, we kind of understand what the challenge has been along the way, and I guess I've kind of been there with you along those challenges, and you've been there for ours. What would you say, like, the most rewarding thing about growing your business has been? Why do you keep doing it?
I think it is knowing that you're making a difference, and that sounds really twee, but I think there are some businesses that have come to us for help, for our services, and we've seen them grow. We've managed to get them in sort of their target publications. We've managed to really grow their reputation. We've helped them win awards, and you've just kind of seen them start off as quite small, or well, not so much small, but like a hidden gem that nobody knows about, to being something that everybody knows about and people are talking about, and you see their star rise, I suppose. And I still really enjoy doing that, working with people. And then obviously the team as well, that whenever they achieve something that they think maybe they weren't that confident in doing, but then they've done something and you think, oh, well done, that's brilliant. And seeing them grow, that's really good. And like Laura, for example, hopefully she won't mind me saying, but when she came to us, she was going through a bit of a confidence crisis. And she says, sort of, since she's joined Ballyhoo, like, the way she's kind of been nurtured and she's grown, she's been promoted as well within the business. Her confidence has come back, and you can't really put a price on something like that if you've been able to do that for somebody. I think just sort of working with the team and seeing them grow and blossom and developing friendships as well. I think we've got a really good team and a really good culture, and that makes me proud. And the results that we've managed to get for our clients, that makes me proud. So, and also, actually, I was saying to my husband at the weekend, we were talking a bit about sort of starting up a business and everything that goes into it. And then he was sort of saying, well, what did you want out of it when you started? And I said, well, I just wanted a job, almost, to create a job for myself that fitted in around the kids. And then he's like, so you've managed to, like, pay yourself every month, pay into the house every month for nearly 7 years. He was like, that's a pretty big achievement. And I'm like, yeah, it is actually, when you put it like that. That kind of almost going back to the original why, and you think, yeah, I've managed to create a business that's been able to not only do that for me, but to do that for a team as well.
I think building our team's been one of the most rewarding things, although working with our clients is also, because when you're still working with someone, like 8 or 9 years later, that doesn't happen by accident. It's because they really value what you do, and it does mean something. But yeah, we've taken members of the team who started off with apprentices, then moved into management roles in the business. But the confidence has grown a huge amount. They're really productive. And I know people are always talking about that there's a shortage of people, but actually, in my opinion, there's a shortage of really good quality jobs, because people can work in, and hopefully there's no backlash if I say this, but we can work in a Amazon warehouse, or they can work in a pub and not get any kind of training. But sometimes they do get training. There's a lot of, they can be an Uber Eats driver and literally get paid less than minimum wage, and that all gets classed as work by the government. But but giving someone a proper qualification, giving someone the confidence to actually be highly productive in the country's economy, that's a different kind of work. And that's one of the things I set out. Initially, I just wanted to be self-employed and have that freedom. But when I did realize I really wanted that team, like one of those criteria I said is, it's not about the quantity of jobs that we create. It's about creating really high quality jobs, and I kind of feel it's a bit of a shame, like other businesses don't actually follow that. I know yours does definitely, and we've got lots of clients who do. But there's a lot of businesses as well where they're happy to pay a little bit more without giving anyone some development, and then people are happy to take a little bit more without any kind of long-term development. And I always find it a little bit sad when that happens.
The world of work is constantly changing, isn't it? Even if you have been working in the same industry for a long time, there's always new things you can be learning. And particularly sort of in PR as well, PR and marketing, that changes all the time, doesn't it? You've always got to learn about the next big thing. And so, all of that stuff, stay on top of it.
I did a video on compounding recently, and actually, I gave an example. Like, we used to have this game called Commando Tag at school, and it was like tag, but like if you tag someone, they wouldn't just be it. You would also still be it, and it's a bit like that in business, because like the more people you tag, then they're all helping you grow. And but in terms of knowledge, like business needs knowledge, and when you've got like 9 or 10 people in a business, and your culture is that they know to be part of your culture, they need to go out and learn, they need to bring stuff into your business, it's expected of them, then the rate you start bringing knowledge into your business it just is exponentially more than when you were just doing it by yourself. So I kind of feel like one of the things that's most rewarding for us is that we just built this asset, and it's this team, but it's also a culture. And we're constantly bringing that information back. So,
yeah, definitely.
One thing I really wanted to ask you, because I know you do a lot of copywriting in the business, and what's ChatGPT doing to the industry at the moment?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, actually. So yeah, I was initially a bit worried about it. I thought, oh God, is this gonna sort of do us out of a job? And me and my 9-year-old son actually were having a play about with it one night, and we were asking it to do different things. So he was like, write me a poem about Black Panther.
Oh, right.
And stuff like that. And we were just seeing the results that came back. And it was all right. I don't think you can get across personality, tone of voice, something that's true to your brand through something like that. And again, one thing that worries me, and I posted on Kevin Robinson, he's a copywriter, and he was asking a question about this on LinkedIn yesterday. And I commented on his post and said, the one thing that worries me about it all is where is the app getting its knowledge and its information from? It's obviously getting it from the internet. So if in time everybody is using ChatGPT to create their content, it's obviously going to be getting content from other sort of AI related content, isn't it? So
this is
it's going to be like a big game of Chinese whispers, where eventually all the knowledge is just taken out and everything reads and sounds the same.
I had a conversation with Ariel about this earlier, because at the moment what we do is we film a video, then we send the video to rev.com to get the transcript, and we put that transcript into ChatGPT to rewrite it to just tidy it up. And then Ariel said, hey, why don't we just tell ChatGPT to write about this topic? And I'm like, well, the thing is, the video I did, there's probably something unique in there that isn't on the internet somewhere else. And even if it's 1% of that video, or like 5% of that video, that's unique. And by putting it into Rev and then putting it in Chat GPT and giving our Chat GPT our own knowledge to form a blog off, then what we're then doing is we're potentially creating something really unique. And in my opinion, Google is I think Google will still be able to keep up with ChatGPT. It's a big challenge, but all Google's going to do is get better at understanding original content.
And hopefully that will work in our favour then, if we're generating original content and it will be sort of valued more and sort of higher authority on Google. But then I recognise that it does have a place and it can help people. I mean, there's another business owner I was speaking to. I was a bit insulted actually, but we went in. It was actually like a kids' party, and he was like, "Oh, have you seen about ChatGPT?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I've been using it to do my blogs. Come over here." So went over to his laptop, but he's dyslexic, and he was saying that it really helps him because he's dyslexic. And I was like, "Yeah, that's a really good point, because you can then just go in and edit it rather than him sitting there in front of a blank sort of Word document trying to write something."
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it does have its place as a tool, but I'm not overly worried that it's out for all our jobs, because I think what we can bring to the table.
We did get some really good comedy value out of it, like a few weeks ago, because when we first started using it, we're testing it, and we're like, "Hey, give me an excuse for why I can't make it to dinner with a friend," and then just at the end we were like, in 2,000 words, and it was just the way it was just like recycling content, and it was like finding everything on the internet of why someone couldn't make it to dinner. It was good, but it does have to all come from somewhere already. So
That's it. And I think you do need to, particularly if you are pitching yourself as an expert in what you do, you need to show that you've got that expert knowledge. You don't read something that they've already read 10 times over in different places, and it's all a bit kind of meh.
Well, but you know what? It's also partially devaluing the power of the written word, which means video is even more relevant now, I think. So actually, we're really focusing on video content, but I think I prefer video content anyway, so it probably will help move in our favour. And then maybe for your industry, it'd be more about live events and.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely obviously still room for the written word, and yeah, I just think you can't tell stories in the same way without it. I think you need it. I think language is a very powerful thing, and even things like SEO and stuff. You know, you still need to get your keywords in there and stuff like that, don't you? Yeah, I do think what we're doing is still hugely relevant. We just need to move with the times and not get left behind. And I think that's what a lot of newspapers are finding as well. You know, print is dwindling, but it's how else can they get local news out to people or national news out to people? And again, they're embracing video, aren't they? But then they are still writing articles as well. So I think it's getting that mix right.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
So I guess we're coming to the end of the podcast, really. It's been amazing having you on here. Really, if like the sort of final question I just wanted to ask you is, well, actually, there was two questions I really wanted to ask you, which I haven't covered yet. So, like, is there a time where you kind of felt like giving up when you were running a business?
Yeah, I think there is, if I'm honest. Not so much, it's a weird one, isn't it? Where you feel like you've had enough. Is that the same as wanting to give it up? I think there's been times where I've worked so hard that I've burnt myself out, where you think, I don't think I can do any more. I physically cannot think, I can't string a sentence together, where really all you need is a bit of a break. And then there has been like the tough times. I mean, we sort of touched on COVID, but one thing I didn't say is that whilst trying to sort of generate enough business to keep us all in work, I was homeschooling 2 kids as well. So that was so tough. And yeah, I really struggled mentally with that, I'll be honest. I think not having that cultural thing of being in the office, just being at home all the time. There were some days where I wouldn't get dressed. I'd get up, I'd set the kids off with something to do. I'd set like the people I work with off with stuff to do.
Yeah.
I'd be having Zoom calls and meetings, phone calls, trying to make sure that all the work was still coming in and getting turned around. And that, there were people saying to me, oh, I guess you can furlough people. I'm like, but I've got less time than I had before. So I need the guys to help me get the work done. It felt like trying to get that balance right between, at one point it was, I'll do homeschool during the day and then I'll do my work at night, and then realising that you can't function for months doing that. We won a good contract with the HS2 network, and I was doing some work on that. And then I got to a point where I had to say to them, I can't do anymore. I literally do not have enough hours in the day. And I'd done a little bit for them, but I had to, they just announced that we were going into another lockdown. I thought the kids were going to go back to school after Christmas, and it was the January. And they said, we're going into another lockdown, the schools aren't opening up. And I just cried, and I was like, I'm going to have to turn this work down because I have not got any time to fit it in. And then I did find all of that really hard. And there were times there where, again, you're seeing people that have been furloughed. I got chatting to another parent, and he was like, oh, the weather's been beautiful, been going for walks every day, I've been playing out in the garden with the kids. And I felt like I was just shutting mine in a room going, Mum's got a Zoom call. Or I make a joke of it now, but I'd be like, right, PE time, go on the trampoline. And it was just, trying to make sure that they were staying on top of all their schoolwork, and that Katie and Catherine had enough work to do, and that I was getting all my work done, but then I was still growing the business, keeping the pipeline going. And I guess as well, clients needed us more. It wasn't a case of, we kind of have now where we'll have like a monthly check-in meeting with all of them. Some of them be like, their situation was changing sort of daily or weekly, depending on what was happening in the news. The ones in retail, the shop's open, the shop's shut, the shop's open, you know what I mean? And it was, okay, we need to change our messaging, or we need to change what we're working on. Can you stop doing this and do this instead? So we were constantly changing plans, and that was really hard as well. So I think COVID was probably a big challenge, not just for the business, but for me personally. But then when you look at the financials, I think it was our best year. But I think it was just that hyper focus, I've got to make this work. But almost at the expense of myself. It was tough.
Yeah, it's quite inspiring though. It can't have been easy. I mean, we only had one small kid, so it was probably a lot easier to manage, and she was only like 1 year old at 1 year old at the time, and we had family helping. But I can't imagine how tough that would have been. Yeah,
like we had no outside help at all, and then my husband was still working. He had to go in every day.
Sorry, no, I don't think our family was helping at that point because we weren't allowed to see them. No, apologies. No, it was just us, but there was two of us versus a 1 year old. It was manageable. And then the sort of the final question I really wanted to ask you. That's an amazing story, and I think you'll be really inspiring to a lot of business owners watching this, especially young mothers who just come back and want to get that flexibility and want to do something they're passionate about and help other people. I think the last question I just wanted to ask you was, those people I just described, what advice would you give them when they're starting up?
One thing I really found personally, and I think not enough emphasis is put on your mindset, your emotions, and how much they come into play when you're running a business. And I think you almost need to get to know yourself a little bit, because I think if you're starting a business, you go into it thinking, I'm good at X, and then you quickly have to learn how to do other things. So you need to learn how, say, if you're very good at PR, for example, you then need to learn how to be a salesperson, how to do your own accounts, invoicing and that sort of thing. You need to wear so many hats. But then you will have days where you do get the imposter syndrome, or you feel like, I can't do anymore. That kind of, I think you need to build on things like resilience, or even just be prepared that it is going to be tough, and you need to find this reserve within you somehow. And what we were talking before about how you react to different situations as well. I think I've just been really surprised throughout my whole journey, just how much your mindset and emotions can affect your decision making, can affect the service that you're delivering to people. I think, it can't be minimize, really. It's something you do have to take into account is, get to know yourself, trust your gut a lot as well. I mean, people said that to me when I first started, but I think, sometimes you do think, yeah, I am feeling this, but if I just do this and then it all comes full circle up, I should listen to my gut. So, I'm not quite sure how to wrap that up in a nice little soundbite, but I think mindset is huge, and to just kind of be aware of it and work on it. And I think it can work in your favor. It can drive you.
What do you? I guess this is an extra question, but what do you read anything, or do you have any like resources that you go to when you want that inspiration?
I guess I do listen to a lot of audiobooks.
Do you have a favourite?
No, not really. I think I've listened to the same sort of business books that most people listen to. But yeah, I think things like the Stephen Bartlett podcast is really good. And also we did a lot of mindset work with a training company. This was during COVID. And I think it was partly for me, but then also I was a bit worried. I thought, if I'm feeling like this, how are the girls going to be feeling? Because they had kids as well. I thought they'll be doing the homeschooling thing. They'll be trying to get their work done. So I wanted to kind of provide a resource, and we had external coaches come in, and they did a series of online sessions for us on things like resilience, confidence, assertiveness and saying no, and things like that. And it was all provided by NLP trained people. And I think that was really, really valuable. And you can apply the NLP principles to a lot of what you do. So yeah, I think that I found those sort of resources valuable.
Okay, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, Emma, thank you so much for joining us on this.
Thank you for having me.
I've really enjoyed it. And so everyone, you've been listening to the Unrelenting Drive podcast, and keep an eye out for many more episodes coming up, and don't forget to get in touch. All right, thanks.